keep on talking on the impact of coronavirus crisis on the football, and today we'll focus on the impacts on the English football and financial side of that impact. And our guest today is Roger Bell, a financial expert and one of the founders of Visible.com. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody.
We often consider Premier League as the richest league in the world, but you calculate it as a Visible since 2009. Premier League clubs has an economic loss of 2.7 billion pounds. Am I wrong? Yeah. Were the Premier League clubs were already in difficulty before this COVID-19 crisis?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this crisis is crystallizing a number of problems that were there already. You know, as you say, we use this economic profit thing, which people get themselves in a bit of a state about, but it's really just a metric which includes all of the costs of doing business, including the cost of equity capital, which for perfectly legal reasons, accounting metrics often leave out, or they do leave out. So we started looking at this 2 or 3 years ago, more out of enthusiasm. We're using methods that we have in our consultancy practice. And we just brought them across to look at football because we love the game, kind of thing. So it was initially one of enthusiasm to see what was happening. And then one, as we did more and more work, and as we got requested to do more work from people out there, we didn't think anybody interested in this stuff. We then became more and more concerned at the picture of value destruction that we were seeing. You're absolutely right that a lot of people think the Premier League is incredibly rich, and there's certainly huge sums of money coming into the game. But the trouble is, there's huge sums of money going out as well. So I think we did some numbers that might be slightly out of date, but I think the principle still applies. That if a pint of beer in 1992, according to the national statistics, London prices probably, was £1.45 for a pint of beer.
Yeah.
And if a pint of beer followed the domestic television contract, each increment from 1992 through to about last year, pint of beer would be £65.
Less than £1.50, and then now
£65.
£65.
It followed the same increments as the television deal.
Amazing.
So when you see it through that lens, you start to think, well, this just can't continue. This is unsustainable. This is even before the current dreadful crisis. This just can't continue, kind of thing. And we began to sort of issue some of our stuff through press releases. Clearly, you've seen some of our stuff on the website and what have you. And we didn't think anybody would be interested in this, this economic profit of the football club. We've been staggered at how interested fans are. I mean, it's amazing. It is amazing.
Let me ask you about not the current season, but the past season.
Sure.
How many of the 20 Premier League clubs did have an economic profit?
Oh, crikey. I could give you precise details. I've got the numbers to hand. But in the 2018-19 numbers, because we're like a year behind because we're using the published accounts. The economic loss, we've got 2 clubs yet to come. The economic loss is 600 million plus, in excess of 600 million. We're still refining our numbers. And the previous highest economic loss was 2011, when it was 480 million. So we've got 2 clubs to go, and we're 120 million more than we were in 2011. But generally speaking, there's about a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 chance of a club producing a positive economic profit, i.e. value creation rather than value destruction.
That means only 4 or 5 clubs out of 20 in Premier League.
I think in the current season they're pretty much all in the red. No, I tell a lie. Liverpool have produced a 7 million economic profit, but they did win the Champions League.
Yeah, an amazing season, and more troubles are coming up.
I think so. Yeah, regrettably, I think so.
Yeah. You analyze the financial accounts of those clubs. How will be the impact of COVID-19 on the revenues of the clubs in the upcoming season?
I mean, it really depends. We're all in the lap of the gods at the moment. I mean, I think there's been quite a bit of press over the weekend about whether the season's going to restart, within a month, 6 weeks' time. Personally, I find it difficult to even talk about when thousands of people are dying every day. But I think it will take. We're still doing some work on all this, so a health warning. But we think the revenues will be down by 25% at least.
For the current season or the next?
For the current season, compared to last season, at least. And we're still working our numbers up. Part of the problem is it's not just you lose the broadcasting revenue, but also the advertising revenue and commercial revenue that the clubs get. And this is an area where Manchester United have been unbelievably successful. Kind of thing. We did some, I think there was one exercise to give you some idea. The gap between Manchester United's commercial revenue and Arsenal's commercial revenue is 62 million more than Arsenal's gate receipts. That's the gap between the two numbers.
Oh, I see.
So the question is, how many of the sponsors have got the money at the moment to put money into advertising at football and advertising on Sky and all that. So that's all got to be sort of calibrated through. It's quite a complex calculation, and we had a go at it the other day. We're not really happy with the numbers. We're going to have another look at it probably after this call, actually.
Yeah, we were still considering the big six. We're a bit luckier than the other 14 clubs.
Well, but, yeah.
I read that probably in Daily Mirror that one of the big six is losing £9 million per week.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are jaw-dropping. I mean, if you take Manchester United, their turnover in 2013 was, give or take, about £360 million. And again, give or take, by 2019, the turnover had grown at about 630 million pounds, give or take. So it's phenomenal growth in turnover. The problem is the cost base has grown by more.
Yeah,
that's the issue. So if you're only looking at things through this revenue lens, of course it looks wealthy. Of course it looks amazing. It's when you put the cost base through, and then the cost of equity capital and all those sort of things, and tax and all those things. Before you know it, these things are not, economically. They're not economically sustainable. I mean, even before all this happened, before the crisis, all this terrible, we were worried about the future of the game. And before the crisis, we thought that the only way that the big six could address their financial or their economic picture was through a Super League. And we hate the idea of a Super League because we like the fact, Burnley go to Chelsea and give them a game and all that. But the fact is, the way the numbers are looking, that back then, that was our sort of central scenario, because that's the only way they could continue to get this growth in revenue and get a control on the costs.
You mentioned the cost.
Yeah.
How can the Premier League clubs lower or reduce their costs in the maybe upcoming year?
Well, it's very difficult for them because a lot of these contracts that they've signed with players run for several years. So you can't just flick a switch and just reduce the cost base. It's not that easy. I mean, I think what it's telling you is when you do a movement note, either at the Premier League level, 1 year to another year in the movement, or when you take the Manchester United example kind of thing, and we're big fans of a lot of what Manchester United are doing. What I think it tells you is where the balance of power in the football industry is. And it would suggest to us that up until, maybe the crisis will change it, but up until a year ago, the balance of power was with the players and their agents. Kind of thing. So when that happens, they're holding the higher negotiating power. Now that can't carry on forever. Kind of thing. Sooner or later, the players have signed contracts. They're understandably saying, "Well, we signed a contract," kind of thing, entered into in good faith. So it's a very, very difficult position. But sooner or later, the players and their agents have got to recognise the economic position of the clubs. Sooner or later, otherwise, one of the clubs is going to go under.
That 25% fall in the revenues, maybe more to come next season. Does that mean we will see a fall also in maybe transfer spending?
I think so. I think so. I think it's inevitable. I mean, I think Ed Woodward at Manchester United has already said that kind of thing. I mean, it's inevitable. Kind of thing. I mean, the thing is, you were financially stretched before you even came into the crisis. Kind of thing. We were looking at losses with two clubs yet to come of over 600 million a year ago before the crisis came in, and this is not going to help matters. So things are going to get a lot tighter. So I'd be very surprised to see a very, very active transfer market this summer. Very surprised.
I was also wondering about the smaller clubs.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've analyzed Norwich City.
Yeah.
On Visible. How is their situation? For instance, Norwich.
Well, it's life and death for a lot of these clubs. I mean, we're big fans of Burnley as a club. We think Burnley manage themselves incredibly well. Mainly because they sort of seem to take relegation in their stride and come back, and the balance sheet gets repaired and whatever. So we're big fans of Burnley. Norwich, don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I know it sticks in the craw a bit that football clubs are furloughing some of their people, and I know that. But you're faced with trying to keep the whole thing alive. Well, in many ways, look through that lens. The clubs, the owners, unless you have a billionaire owner kind of thing, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, I think that one of the more worrying developments and what this work's telling us over time is unless you're a billionaire kind of thing, or a city-state looking for soft power, then it's very, very difficult to buy a football club and compete. It's very, very difficult.
Do you see any other alternative to cover that costs, expenses? I mean, credit loans or government loans?
Oh, it's a difficult question. I'd need to. I mean, again, with these sort of issues, the devil's in the detail, isn't it? Kind of thing. But I mean, I wonder. I mean, the stuff the feedback that's coming out of government is one of, well, you need to get your own house in order before we'll put money into it, kind of thing. And I think politically, it's very difficult for a government to sort of say, I tell you what, we're going to rescue a football club. Meanwhile, our health service is stretched. See, I can't see that happening, So I really don't think the government is going to bail out these clubs. I really don't think so.
Yeah. The crucial revenue is TV deal on Premier League and maybe elsewhere as well. We are in the middle of 2019, 2022 TV deal.
Yeah.
Do you see the broadcasters renegotiate the deal, or maybe should we suspect a fall in the next TV deal?
I think that as soon as I say this, I'm bound to be wrong, of course. But the last TV deal, which I think we're in the third year of at the moment. The last, because they negotiated over 3 years. They've been very, very. Whereas before they were very clever and they were very obvious about publishing the actual number. This time, it's not entirely clear. We think there was about a 400 to 500 million reduction last time in the contract, but nobody's ever really come out and told us what it was, sort of thing. Certainly, back then, our hypothesis was that from an economic, when you look at Sky and when you look at BT economically, they weren't in the surplus, and therefore we thought, where was the impetus coming? Where was the money coming from to increase the deal? And then people say to us, well, what you don't understand is that Amazon will come in and they'll buy it all for 4.6 billion for 3 years or whatever it is. And our response to that is, well, that may be the case, but something like Sky's been at this since 1992. They've got huge experience benefits from doing it. They know where to put the cameras. They know all this, and they can't make it run. And they after 20 odd years of doing this. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about assuming that Amazon are just going to come in and rescue this thing. Now, Amazon they've obviously bought a couple of days of games in the current deal, which have been shown on their on their website channel, and they bought some games in Germany. So they're taking a very, very slow look at this. It's very like them. Let's have a look at it, take our time, and we'll see what happens in play. My guess is it'll be down. My guess is it'll be down. And I think this is why somebody like Manchester United, again, have been quite smart. You know, I think their TV deal is about 38% of their total revenue. Now, from Bournemouth, it's 88% of their total revenue.
88%.
Yeah, for Bournemouth. So, and there's that sort of split in between. But I mean, and most of them are skewed to vast majority of their revenue comes from TV.
And Premier League is not the whole English football. We have Football League as well. And when I look at the figures of the Championship, I see that they're in terrible condition as well.
Desperate, isn't it? Desperate.
Yeah. How desperate?
We think that the loss for the Championship and for the Premier League for 2018-19 will be over £1 billion. £1 billion for the two things together. It's just not sustainable.
Why do Championship clubs risk heavily? Only for promotion to the Premier League?
Yeah, in the belief that they'll make the big leap into the Premier League and get the big revenues. But what they don't realise, or some of them don't realise, is because the big revenues come with huge costs. You know, it's a laudable and understandable ambition, but it needs to be financially planned for. And what you see over time is a club comes up, and there's a very, very high chance that within 5 years they're back down again. You can see their balance sheet getting almost economically exhausted over time. And then we've seen a link outside of the top 6 clubs. We've seen a link between the level of economic profit or lack thereof and relegation. We do see a link. We've only got 11 years of data. We need to do a bit more. Yeah. But we are seeing a link.
Yeah, I see. And finally, I'd like to ask a question about your own team, Newcastle.
Oh, yeah, man. This is why I look so old.
There might be a new owner soon.
Yeah.
Will they be able to spend as much as they like next season?
I don't think so. Actually, I don't think so. I think there'll be more spending than there's been in the current regime. But financial fair play is a lot more rigorous now than it was when, say, Manchester City were bought out 10 years ago, 2009, 2000, whenever that was, you know. So I think it's a lot harder for clubs to spend, you know, massive amounts of money. But we'll see. We'll see. You know, we're hopeful. As Newcastle fans, we're always optimistic, you know. But you know, yeah, we're hopeful. We'll see. The deal hasn't gone through yet, of course.
Roger, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
And you. Thanks for your time. I hope that's been helpful.